Every Grateful Dead origin story you have ever heard starts the same way. A group of free spirits found each other in the San Francisco counterculture, plugged in, dropped acid, and changed music forever. It is a beautiful story. It is also incomplete, because before the acid, before the improvisation, before the wall of sound and the parking lot economy, and the 30-year odyssey that followed, there was a music store. A small, unremarkable shop at 534 Bryant Street in Palo Alto called Dana Morgan's Music. And in 1965, inside that store, every single member of the original Warlocks either worked or hung out. All 5 of them. Garcia taught guitar and banjo for $3 a half hour. Weir taught guitar. Kreutzmann gave drum lessons. Pigpen was the janitor. And the owner's son, Dana Morgan Jr., ran the shop. That is not a coincidence. That is the origin of the Grateful Dead. And the part nobody tells you is that Dana Morgan Jr. made the whole thing possible, played bass on their first gigs, and was cut loose after 4 shows at a pizza parlor. Then his father pulled the equipment, Garcia lost his guitar, and the band that would preach radical community for 3 decades began with an act of cold pragmatism. Dana Morgan Sr. opened his music store sometime around 1940. He taught trumpet, clarinet, and flute, repaired instruments, and ran the kind of laid-back shop where students could wander in and mess around on used guitars. Norm Van Maastricht, one of those students, remembered it as a place where you could just play. No pressure, no hard sell. Morgan Sr. was old school, a brass man. He liked things orderly. His son, Dana Morgan Jr., was born in Palo Alto on January 4th, 1941. He played brass, taught trumpet in the store, and by the early 1960s was helping run the family business. He was conventional, responsible, the kind of guy who showed up on time and kept the lights on. In a few years, the people around him would be dropping acid and reinventing American music. Dana Morgan Jr. would still be the guy who showed up on time. Jerry Garcia was none of those things, but when he walked into Dana Morgan's Music looking for work sometime around 1962, Morgan Sr. saw something in him. He later described Garcia as a very immaculate, tall, thin boy with a small mustache. Garcia got the gig teaching guitar and banjo, and for the next 2 years, that store became the center of his universe. He taught lessons, sold instruments, and built a network of students and fellow musicians who orbited the shop. On New Year's Eve, 1963, a 16-year-old kid named Bob Weir wandered past the store and heard banjo coming from the back room. He walked in, found Garcia playing, and the two jammed until dawn. That night led directly to the formation of Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions, the acoustic jug band that preceded the Warlocks, and it happened because of a music store on Bryant Street. Bill Kreutzmann was already giving drum lessons there. Ron McKernan, the kid everybody called Pigpen, was working as the janitor. The entire cast of what would become the most important live band in American history was already assembled under one roof. They just did not know it yet. By early 1965, the jug band era was dying. The Beatles had detonated the British invasion, Bob Dylan had gone electric, folk music was not going to cut it anymore, and everybody in that store could feel it. The accounts of what happened next do not agree, and that matters, because if you are telling a Grateful Dead story to deadheads, you better get the details right. Garcia always said it was Pigpen who pushed for an electric band. He had been pestering me for a while, Garcia recalled, wanting to start a blues band. But Weir tells a different story. Weir remembers that it was Dana Morgan Jr. who proposed the idea. The son of the owner of the music store said, "Hey, listen, you guys want to start a rock and roll band? I will loan you the instruments if I can play bass." And that is how the Warlocks got their gear. Garcia, Weir, and Kreutzmann were broke music teachers. Pigpen was a janitor. None of them could afford electric instruments, amplifiers, or a PA system. Dana Morgan Jr. could, or more precisely, his father's store could. And the price of admission was simple. Dana plays bass. Garcia later put it plainly. The bass player was the son of the guy who owned this music store, which was convenient because he gave us all the equipment. We did not have to go out and hassle to raise money to buy equipment. Bob Weir confirmed it from a different angle. Dana Morgan Jr. played bass, which ensured that we got to use the instruments and amplifiers that we otherwise could not have afforded. So the Warlocks were not born from spontaneous counterculture rebellion. They were born from a transaction. A music store owner's son fronted the gear, and in return, he got to be in the band. 5 guys who all worked at the same shop, playing on the shop's equipment, rehearsing in the shop's space. The Warlocks were not just connected to Dana Morgan's music. The Warlocks were Dana Morgan's music. Their very first gig was April 1st, 1965 at Menlo College in Menlo Park. April Fool's Day. Their first public show came a month later, May 5th, at Magoo's Pizza Parlor, also in Menlo Park. A pizza joint. Not the Fillmore, not the Avalon Ballroom, a place where families ate pepperoni slices and college kids drank cheap beer. They played every Wednesday that month. May 5th, May 12th, May 19th, May 26th. That was Dana Morgan Jr.'s entire performing career with a band that would play over 2,300 shows. John Dawson, who attended the first Magoo's gig, remembered the arrangement clearly. They let Dana play bass because he had all the stuff to play on, but he could not play bass for shit. That was the problem. Dana Morgan Jr. had made the band possible, but he was not a musician. Not really. Dennis McNally, the Dead's official historian, wrote that Dana was not really a musician and had a National Guard commitment that prevented him from playing weekend gigs. He was dependable in one world and useless in the other. Phil Lesh later recalled what Garcia told him about the situation. Our bass player is not a musician, and we have to tell him what notes to play. The book So Many Roads put it more bluntly. Garcia knew the bass player Dana Morgan Jr. was not cutting it. He was too square, too straight, too disinterested in getting stoned. That last part matters more than it sounds. This was not just about musical chops. The Warlocks were beginning to absorb the psychedelic culture swirling around the peninsula. Dana did not fit. He was not interested in the experimentation, the looseness, the willingness to follow the music wherever it went. He was a trumpet teacher's son who had offered to bankroll a rock band. The band was evolving past him before they had even played their fifth show. Within a few months, they would be playing Ken Kesey's acid tests, where the music and the acid became inseparable. Dana Morgan Jr. was never going to be part of that. And then Phil Lesh walked into Magoo's. The exact night is debated, but the broad strokes are consistent across every source. Lesh came to a Magoo's gig. Garcia knew immediately. Between sets, he pulled Lesh into a booth and told him he was the new bass player. Think about what that means. Garcia had known this guy for years. Lesh was a classically trained musician, a composer, a guy who thought about music on a completely different level, and Garcia made the decision on the spot. Not after deliberation, not after a band meeting, between sets at a pizza parlor. Marshall Lester, a friend of the band, reflected on what that moment signified. It was more than simply swapping one bass player for another. Replacing Dana was a leap from a concession to grown-up bourgeois life to the pursuit of something greater. Friends around Garcia were worried. They knew that firing the boss's son meant losing the job, losing the gear, losing the rehearsal space. Everything. Garcia did it anyway. What people get wrong about Jerry Garcia is the contradiction at the center of him. He feared confrontation. He hated uncomfortable conversations. He would avoid eye contact during band meetings and let things fester for months rather than have a direct talk. Sarah Garcia, his first wife, said it clearly. In music, Jerry could take people on and be very direct, and actually quite cruel to band members if they met with his displeasure. People were scared of him. He was a hard taskmaster. That contradiction is the key. Garcia could not look you in the eye at dinner, but he would burn down his entire livelihood rather than carry a bass player who could not keep up. And that is exactly what happened. When they fired Dana Morgan Jr., the dominoes fell immediately. Sue Swanson remembered the aftermath. Jerry's guitar was from Dana Morgan's music, so all of a sudden he did not have an axe. I remember him and his wife, Sarah, sitting there trying to figure it out. We have got $200 in the bank. How much is this axe? $200. That is what Jerry Garcia and his wife had in the bank when he made the decision to fire the guy who had given him everything he needed to start a band. He did not weigh the cost first. He made the musical decision and dealt with the consequences after. Dana Morgan Sr. responded exactly how you would expect a father to respond. He pulled the equipment. He banned the Warlocks from the store. Hank Harrison, who hung around the band, said Morgan Sr. held an intense dislike for the Warlocks. In a 1988 interview, Morgan Sr. admitted he was tired of the noise and worried about their marijuana use. I decided I just hated the noise they were making, he said. Finally, I got so tired of them, I sold the instruments. Garcia and Weir lost their teaching jobs. The band lost their rehearsal space, their amplifiers, their PA system, everything. They scrambled to Guitars Unlimited in Menlo Park, transferred their students, and promptly borrowed equipment from the new store. Robert and Pauline Swain at Swain's House of Music lent gear because they liked helping young musicians. Kreutzmann later said they were all playing on borrowed amps. Garcia's mother loaned money to help buy new instruments. The entire infrastructure that had made the Warlocks possible was gone in a matter of days. The band's whole world at that point spanned a few miles of El Camino Real between Palo Alto and Menlo Park. No San Francisco, no Haight-Ashbury, just a corridor of music shops and pizza joints where broke 20-somethings were trying to figure out how to be a band without any money. And they kept going. People want to call this a betrayal. It was not. It was the first time the Grateful Dead did what they would do over and over for 30 years, protect the music at all costs. even when the cost was everything they had. And once you see it with Dana Morgan Jr., you cannot unsee the pattern. In 1968, Garcia and Lesh tried to fire both Pigpen and Bob Weir because the music was not meeting their standard. They actually went through with it before the decision was reversed. As the acid era reshaped the band's sound, Pigpen's blues vocabulary could not keep up, and he was gradually sidelined from the music he had helped inspire. Tom Constantin was gone by 1970. Keith and Donna Godchaux were pushed out in '79 after years of declining performance that everyone could hear but nobody wanted to address. And Garcia himself would walk off stage mid-show if the band was not locking in. Every single one of those decisions was about the music. Not ego, not politics, not money, the music. And Dana Morgan Jr. was patient zero. And if you need final proof that Garcia put the music above literally everything, look at what it cost him. By the late 80s, he was a diabetic heroin addict with sleep apnea, and the Dead were still playing over 80 shows a year. He chose the stage over his own survival. The man who could not confront a bandmate about a wrong note collapsed into a coma in July of 1986 and was back on tour within months. The music was not just his priority, it was his entire reason for being alive, and eventually it was the reason he was not. Marshall Lester called it perfectly. Garcia would pick up stuff and drop it, and that often involved picking up people and dropping them on the way to finding what he wanted to do. The band that built its legend on community, on radical trust, on the idea that the audience and the musicians were in it together, began with a young guitar teacher who looked at the guy who gave him everything and said, "You are not good enough." That is not a contradiction. That is the foundation. The Grateful Dead could afford to be generous with their audience, with their tapers, with their community, because they were ruthless about the one thing that made all of it matter. The music had to be transcendent. And if you could not get there, you were gone. It did not matter if you were the guy who handed them the instruments. Dana Morgan Jr.'s entire career with the Warlocks lasted 4 Wednesday nights at a pizza parlor in Menlo Park. He was born in Palo Alto. He made the most important band in American live music history possible, and later histories barely mentioned him. He became a trivia question. Even Phil Lesh, in interviews, only referred to splitting from Dana Morgan in passing. Lesh himself admitted he never met or spoke with Dana Morgan Jr. The man who started it all was erased before the story even began. And maybe that tells you more about the Grateful Dead than any live recording ever could. They did not romanticize their origins. They did not preserve loyalty for its own sake. They made the hard choice in May of 1965, and they kept making it for the next 30 years. The Grateful Dead's first act was not a song. It was a firing, and everything that followed, the glory and the wreckage and the music that changed the world, grew from that one cold decision in a pizza parlor in Menlo Park.